I'm continually trying to track down different marker brands that I can compare to Copic markers, but there's one popular brand that I've yet to consider. That is until now. This is Spectrum Noir versus Copic. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome, mad creators, to the underground laboratory where we create robots, alien zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. And every now and again, we also do marker reviews, marker comparisons. We take all kinds of different markers and compare them mostly to Copic markers, these guys right here, because they're pretty much the top of the line. That's what everyone aspires to be. So, we're trying to find a contender, somebody who could stack up to these. And of course, the main drawback to Copic markers is they're so expensive. So we're trying to find a lot of what we're looking for is like cheaper markers that are comparable to Copics. But we keep searching, and we've got another contender today. It's the Spectrum Noir markers. Now, Spectrum Noir has a number of different lines of markers. This is I think it's called their coloring system. These are the ones that you see in black. There's some other ones, and maybe we'll get a chance to review some of their other lines. But this is by far and away their most popular line of markers. And I've used these before. I inherited a set from an old job that I did, and so I got these, and they've made some changes to them. We'll talk about some of the changes, some of the upgrades and updates and things like that from the ones that I used to use, and it all looks pretty good. So I'm anxious to kind of delve into these and see how they've changed, and once again see how they compare to the Copic markers. Now, Spectrum Noir is very big in the crafting space. People who do like stamping and things like that. So probably not as big in more like illustration circles, which is what kind of I tend to work in, but they're great markers, and they are starting to branch out, and they do have some that they market specifically. Like they've got a line of illustration markers and design markers that they're kind of marketing to different areas. But for the most part, if you're a crafter, you're probably familiar with these. But if you're if you tend to do just more, illustration with your markers, maybe you haven't heard of these yet, and maybe you'll be surprised at what you can do with these. But we gotta test it out. We gotta figure out if that's the case. So what we're gonna do is I've got this drawing that I did of this sort of space smuggler type guy. And we're gonna make 2 copies of this, and we're gonna side by side, we're gonna compare the Spectrum Noir to the Copic markers and see how they compare, how these guys are they are they a threat to Copics? Because spoiler alert, they're quite a bit less expensive, as are most other options other than Copics. So let's test them out. Okay, let's check out the Spectrum Noir markers. Now, I have a set of these. Well, it's not a set, but I've got tons of Spectrum Noir markers that I got from a previous job that I did. These are some of the older ones. They've redone the style a little bit, and I'll get into some of the differences here, some of the pros and cons of that. But so let's open this new pack. This is the turquoise set. So they come in, here's you can see, there's the essentials, the grays, cool grays, warm grays, pale hues. They've got different sets, and I don't know that they sell these individually like the Copic markers. I think this is probably the smallest set, and they have bigger ones and everything. So as far as packaging goes, it's well designed, but it's paper and cheap plastic, so it's nothing you're gonna keep. Like the Copic markers, the plus with those is they come in a nice kind of hard plastic. This is a larger set, but even the smaller sets kind of come in a nice plastic. So I mean, if you care about that, that's that. So anyway, so let's take a look at the design of these markers. So they're sort of octagonal shapes. It's hard to see from the top because the top of the cap is actually round, but they have sort of an octagonal shape to them, which you think would be sort of uncomfortable to hold, but they've added, this is a new feature. I don't know if you can see that right there is sort of sort of a soft, rubbery, it's not too soft, but it's kind of gives you a little bit of a grip there. So that's kind of a nice addition to these. I'm going to show you these old ones. You can kind of see there's some subtle differences. One thing that you'll see is here, you've got the broad tip, little graphic indicator, and the fine tip. These ones don't have that. So it's, at first I was like, well, how do you know what side is what? But then I noticed, and they're on the other one too, but it's really hard to see. I don't know if you can see that little line there. The line's a little bigger, but where that line is, that's going to be your, I assume that's the bullet tip. Yeah. So you can see when you take the cap off, it's gray versus black on the other side for the chisel tip. Whereas, you know, with Copic markers, they've got their little indicator. I guess they do the same thing. I guess I never noticed that, but they have got the little gray too. Is that gray and then is it white? Yeah, it's exactly the same. That's interesting. I guess I never noticed that. So pretty similar there, but they still have this little indicator because sometimes, you know, it's kind of hard to see. But, you know, the Copic markers, of course, have the chisel tip and the brush nib, which that's sort of the big selling factor for our big decision making, you know, on a lot of these markers is that bullet or that brush nib, which the Spectrum Noir don't have. At least this is what's called their coloring system. Now they've got two other lines. They've got a design and an illustrator line, and the illustrator lines do have a brush tip. So I want to do a review on those later, but this is sort of their most popular line. The other one's a little harder to find. You kind of have to seek those out. So I'm not sure what the difference is other than the tips and everything. Like I said, there's also a design one that has the chisel tip and the bullet nib, but it's not this it's not this line. So the other thing I want to mention is there's, you know, Spectrum Noir. There is also another brand by, I think, Chartpak called Spectra. So just, you know, there's some confusion because there's like three different Spectrum Noir lines, and then there's also the Spectra line from Chartpak, I believe. So just so you don't get confused. But anyway, so let's take a look. So, you know, as far as things like, you know, I've already mentioned they don't have the brush tip, which is, for me, that's sort of a drawback. The caps on the end, these older ones, they were, that wasn't a joke. I mean, it really was kind of hard to put on, and you gotta really snap. But they were really hard to get off, and sometimes you gotta push to snap it, and if you don't, they'll just fall off. So I've had so many that have dried up because of that. I think it looks like they've corrected that on this newer go round. So yeah, it seems like they come off pretty well. It seems like they snap in tight and everything. So you know, kudos for from Spectrum Noir to kind of correct some of the, you know, the things that weren't so great about the first round and everything. But the newer ones look a lot nicer. But anyway, so let's see, what else? So as far as, because of the octagonal shape, they don't really roll. Same thing with the Copic markers, because they're sort of an oval shaped. Because that's always something. The ones that are completely round that just kind of roll off the table, you don't want that. So as far as the caps, they don't really fit on the end. That's, to me, I don't like that. But, you know, here we go. Here's a Copic marker. Same thing. They don't really fit at the end. So, you know, even the top of the line, they don't do that. So, you know, for me, I mean, I like to pop it on the back so I don't lose it or anything. So, something to consider. But if you're comparing Spectrum Noir to Copics, they're the same there, so that kind of evens out. So a little bit about the numbering system. So I'm looking at the top of this one here. It says BT7. These all say BT. It says, so I'm guessing that might stand for blue turquoise. I'm not really sure how their numbering system works, but I believe that's all online. You can figure that out. So one of the differences between this and the Copic marker, so, you know, of course, Copic also has, you know, their numbering system, but they also have a name. Like this one is just simply yellow, where, you know, here you've got one that also says honey. So they've got names for the markers, and sometimes that's easier to remember, like especially if you're sharing markers with others. What are you using? I'm using the honey or whatever. Sometimes it's easier for just as artists to remember, at least for me, to remember a name rather than a number. So it's always nice to have that name as well. The Spectrum Noir do not have any kind of name attached. It's only the number. So another thing to consider on that. As far as the color sort of matching what you're seeing here versus the color of the marker, well, here we'll see. So, you know, that's not very close. And I'll show you another one. This one is probably the most egregious of these, but so look at this. This looks pretty much almost like a sort of a blue, like a periwinkle type color. Now let's take a look here. Yeah, let me get this side. I want to show you that. That's more like a lavender. I mean, these colors couldn't be, I mean, they're totally different. So as far as matching the colors, Spectrum Noir, of most of the markers that I've tried, they're like they're pretty far off from the colors you get on the, I mean, it's almost, you know, you're taking a real gamble. So you really need to make a little chart or something, because these colors just aren't, most of them are just not close. But here, let's kind of go, and so we've done that color. I'm going to show some of the different colors here, just to give you an idea what comes in. Oh, that's the older one. All right, so yeah, some of these older ones, like I said, have dried up, but here we go. So I just want to show you what comes in a pack here. And they have all different packs. I don't know that they sell individual markers. I haven't seen any. So that's sort of the variety you get. That's a pretty good variety for a pack. I've seen some of the other ones, like the sort of beiges or the flesh tones. Some of them are very similar, almost identical. But I purchased this pack just because I use a lot of blues, and I've got, like I said, I've got tons of the other versions, but not too many blues, so I decided to pick up this. But yeah, so all in all, I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at as far as the Spectrum Noir markers. But you know what? The real test is to actually do an illustration with them. So I think that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna compare side by side the Spectrum Noir with the Copic markers. Okay, I've got two photocopies of my little illustration here. We're going to put side by side. Yeah, both Copic and the Spectrum Noir are alcohol-based markers. And if you were ever curious, if you use like a regular like copy machine, like when you go to a copy place or whatever, have copies made, or basically anything on like a laser printer, they don't smudge or anything like that. The alcohol works really well with those. It's maybe not the same as if you were to print something off on your maybe inkjet. They may bleed a little bit, but if you get some copies like from a copy store, they work really well as far as doing marker renderings on. Yeah, this illustration, it's not going to have a ton of different colors. It's always hard to find, whenever I do a comparison, to find a brand that matches, that I can find close enough colors to the Copic markers to whatever I'm doing the comparison with. So I'm going to do the best with what I have. I'm also going to use some blenders, both Copic and Spectrum Noir have a colorless blender. I think pretty much most marker brands have that colorless blender, and I think it's just kind of like just straight alcohol that you can use to blend. So if they don't have one, I guess you could just get little alcohol and that can create some cool effects. But what we're here to talk about is comparing these two things, these two marker brands. So Copic is always, it's the gold standard. They are really good markers, but I just don't see why they're so expensive. I mean, that's the biggest problem with these markers. So I keep hoping that something will come around that's just as good as Copics, but not maybe half the price. And I've tried a lot of different markers, and there's a lot of good ones, but I don't know if I found one that's as good. The closest one for me, I think, would be the ad markers, or the AD markers by Chart Pack, but they aren't alcohol, they're xylene, so they're a little different. But I did a review on those if you guys want to check that out. But some of them, a lot of them come close. Some of them maybe not so close, but they're so inexpensive that, you know, they're worth trying out just for that. But there's a pretty good difference between the price of the Copics and the Spectrum Noir. So that's definitely a plus, like in favor of Spectrum Noir. Again, you know, that the fact that they don't have that brush tip is, you know, that's the biggest thing, trying to find one with the brush tip that also is inexpensive and that can hold up to the Copic markers, you know, kind of the standard set with the Copic markers. So let's talk about the price. Now, as far as I can tell, I don't think that Spectrum Noir sells individual marker, and that is, I mean, it's maybe they do, but I mean, I looked on Dick Blick; they don't sell separate markers there. I looked on Michaels, I looked on Amazon. I didn't see any individual markers. I looked on Jerry's Artorama. I don't even think they sell Spectrum Noir. So I think the 6 marker set is the lowest amount you're going to be able to get. So for a 6 marker set of the Spectrum Noir, you're looking at $15, roughly $15 a pack. Sometimes if you can find them at like a Michaels or something, you can get a discount on that. Same with the Copics though, if you can find Copics at Michaels. But I'm just going to compare them, because you can find better deals. But this is sort of the average. Maybe this is more the suggested retail price or somewhere around that range, but these are at 2 of the same sellers, so that's what I'm going off of. So $15 for you know, a 6-pack, you know, it's a little over $2 a marker if you were to break that down, versus Copic markers. A 6-pack of Copic markers is like $55. So, or that comes out, you know, you're looking at, or if you just buy individual Copics, they're, you know, again, suggested retail somewhere around $7 or $8 a marker. You can find them cheaper on sale or whatever, but I'm just kind of going off of that. So yeah, there's a big price range, and Spectrum Noir are quality markers. I mean, it's a quality company. They make a quality product. You can see here they mix really well. Both of these markers mix great. As far as the performance of the markers, I think they're pretty close. It's just that they don't have that brush tip. But now, as I mentioned, and I really do want to try these out, the Spectrum Noir makes a brand called Illustrator, I think, markers, and they have that brush tip. So I really want to try those out. I don't know if they have as many colors. So let's talk about colors. Copic, you know, kind of wins hands down as far as colors. For their sketch series, which is the ones I'm using, they have 358 colors. So that's a pretty big range, versus Spectrum Noir has 216 colors. So you definitely get more colors with the Copic marker, and I haven't really seen, I don't think there is any other marker brand out there that has more color, a bigger color variety than Copic. Now, that's not the case with all the different Copic markers. Like the Chow, I think they have less than 200 colors. So if you're using those, or I think there may be another, I'm not sure if there's another brand of Copic markers, another line, but you know, some of the other lines have less than 200, so it's kind of around there. But for the sketch that I'm using, you know, 358 colors is quite a bit. Now, you probably, to be fair, you probably don't need to use all those colors. I don't use all I mean, I don't have every Copic color there is. You can get away with a certain amount. So yeah, so that's as far as colors. What else can we compare? So kind of pros and cons. Copic, a con of the Copics compared to the Spectrum Noir, I don't think they hold as much ink. Spectrum Noir seems to have, I mean, I haven't broken them open and I don't know exactly how much ink is in it, but it's a bigger marker, so it stands to reason, at least to me, that there's probably more ink in the Spectrum Noir. Now, we talked about the brush tip. Copics have the brush tip. Spectrum Noir doesn't, at least with this color system series of markers. So that, for me, that's definitely a drawback, not having that brush tip, because I love that so much. Let's see, what else? Refills. This is cool. They are both refillable. The Spectrum Noir, they do sell refills, and not a lot of other marker brands sell those. Copics definitely do. Now, I haven't ordered any refills from the Spectrum Noir, but the one thing that I noticed just looking at them online, it looks like the refills are pretty good quality as far as the way they ship. Because a lot of times, some of those. Sometimes people don't even carry the refills because they tend to break during transit, or the caps come off because they're kind of plastic bottles. But it looked like the Spectrum Noir may have had like kind of a nicer bottle with a nice eyedropper. So it looks like they might have their refills might be pretty decent quality and everything, and maybe a little easier to refill. I don't know. I haven't tried them, and I don't know what they charge for the refills. I didn't look into that, so that's something we can do further research on. But other things that I was talking about, just kind of pros and cons. The caps, neither one of them stick to the end of the marker, so they could get lost. The matching colors on the caps, the Spectrum Noirs are way off, so that's a definite drawback for that. I don't know, there's different things with the packaging. I think the packaging for the Copics have kind of those nice plastic cases, a little better. But yeah, I mean, some of these are very nitpicky. But if you look at, what I'm doing with the illustration, you can see that they look very similar. So I think Spectrum Noir is a pretty good alternative for the price. Just I wish they kind of had that brush tip. That would make all the difference in the world, and we'll try some of the illustration versions, see if they have that brush tip, if they work, how well they work. All right, here are the differences. This here is the Spectrum Noir. This is the Copic. I don't know if you can tell, but they look pretty similar. The finished result is very similar. Kind of the way you lay them down and everything, as you saw, they can be a little different, but yeah, I mean, I'm gonna kind of leave it up to you, because the end result looks pretty close. So, but yeah, that's my comparison between Copic markers, Spectrum Noir. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. You thinking about maybe checking out the Spectrum Noir? Are you gonna stick to Copics? Are you gonna keep searching like I am for other alternatives? Let me know in the comment section. I'll see you guys later. That is all. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Also, you can follow me at Serkworks on social media. Do you like making comics? Then go to Serkworks.com and pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's packed full of fonts, brushes, templates, and more. And best of all, it's totally free.